All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I am Reba Osborne. I'm the Director of Government Affairs at the Naperville Chamber, and thank you all so much for joining us on this call today. I am so excited to have these experts speak with us. I was in contact with Rebecca Houston early in the process, trying to pick her brain and probably driving her crazy with 1,000 questions to make sure that I got the right information in our government brief. So she was very helpful. We tried to get something going several weeks ago, and then Representative Grant Wehrli was so wonderful to spearhead this thing. So it's I have the pleasure today of introducing to you Grant Wehrli, who is this Illinois state representative for District 41. And he is a fellow chamber member, and he has been an absolute wonderful watchdog for us in Springfield, a great advocate. He's someone that I can always pop in his office and pick his brain, probably more often than he would like, but he's always a wealth of information. So I'm going to turn this over to Grant, Representative Wehrli. Let me get more formal. And he will make the introductions to the speakers today.
Thank you, Reba and the Naperville Area Chamber of Commerce for hosting this meeting. As you mentioned, I've always been a strong advocate for business in the state of Illinois and everywhere, to be honest with you. It is one of the things that has made Naperville and Warrenville so successful is partnering with our small businesses. So over the last several weeks, I've had the opportunity to interact with many small business owners, many large business owners, and we certainly find ourselves in unprecedented times. It's my hope that the information provided to you today will be of assistance. There's a lot of things that are constantly changing. I mean, just yesterday, the federal government added another $500 billion to some loan programs. So there is more money from the feds coming. But we also need to see what we can do from the state level to assist you. Like I said, small business and business in general is the backbone of one of the many pillars in Naperville and Warrenville that made us so great. We hope to get to all of your questions, but if we can hold those towards the end of the webinar, if we do not get to your questions, you can certainly email me at wehrli@illhousegop.org, W-E-H-R-L-I, at illhousegop.org, or my office, which is right next door to the chamber office. You can give us a call, 630-696-4160. For today's webinar, I've brought together 3 experts who can do a deep dive into 2 programs that have been put into place to help small businesses during this pandemic. We have Margaret Croak with DCEO and Brad McConnell from Ascion, Illinois, who will speak about the Small Business Emergency Loan Program. And then we also have Reba Houston of the Illinois Treasurer's Office. Thank you, Mike Frericks, for stepping up here, which will talk about the Illinois Bridge Loan Program. Following the presentations, like I said, we will take your questions, and if we don't get to them, you know how to get a hold of us, and if you don't, you can reach out to Reba, and she can point you in the right direction. Just yesterday, Governor Pritzker announced the extension of the stay-at-home order for another 30 days till May 30th. I have mixed emotions about that, but he did make some changes that, quite honestly, the members of the General Assembly and the Republican side of the aisle were pushing for as it deals with small business. Hospitals can now reopen on a limited basis for scheduled procedures, things that people need to get going on. We were hearing from Edward Hospital that they were considering laying off people because they had so much open space because they were only allowed to deal with emergencies and pandemic response. Greenhouses, garden centers are now considered essential, which is a good step. I know my wife is eager to get things going in the garden, and we need to get, people need to get outside. So that was a step in the right direction. Animal groomers can reopen. So, your dog and cat can get a fluff and puff, but I'm starting to look like I'm back in 1979 with the long hair. So I look forward to getting my barbershop reopen again. Take that for what it's worth. Retail stores that were deemed non-essential can open on a limited basis. And this is one of the areas where I don't think the governor went far enough. You can do online ordering and curbside delivery. To me, there is a measured way that we can open up retail with social distancing, proper PPE requirements, things like that. I know many of our retailers are on the edge of not being able to reopen it. So this is a step in the right direction, but it simply doesn't go far enough. The governor yesterday also opened up some outside recreation, state parks, things like that. We all need to get outside. I'm an avid outdoorsman, and quite honestly, staying in my house all the time is getting to me. You can just ask my wife about that one. These are steps in the right direction, but now let's move on to the purpose of this webinar. I'd like to introduce Margaret Croak. She's Deputy Chief of Staff with the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. Margaret, thanks for being here. DCEO does some great work, and let me hand it off to you, and we'll talk about the Small Business Emergency Loan Program.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here. I'm going to share my screen right now. So this presentation goes pretty in depth on a lot of our different programs and offerings. I know that a lot of you on this call are very familiar with some of the programs, so I'm going to try to be as brief as possible so we can get to Q&A. But I want to make sure you all have this information, and then we'll be sharing this PowerPoint, and I'll also be providing a link to it on our website with additional resources. So as many of you know, the governor had a $90 million emergency assistance response for small businesses around Illinois. The programs include the Small Business Emergency Loan Fund, which we're going to get into, and Brad, who's my partner on this, will dive into that more detail. And we also have the Downstate Small Business Stabilization Fund, which is difficult and doesn't necessarily apply for everyone on this call. So we'll get into this. I do want to give a quick update, which I know Brad will explain as well. We are temporarily pausing applications for the Illinois Small Business Emergency Loan Fund just because of the influx of applications we've received. And in order to get through the current applications that we have and that backlog, we need to take a pause. So right now you'll see on Ascion's website and then also on our website that applications are temporarily paused. The program itself is $60 million to support low interest loans of up to $50,000 for small businesses outside of Chicago. Businesses with fewer than 50 employees and less than $3 million in revenue in 2019 are eligible. The rest of the slide kind of goes into the specifics of the program. I also include a link to our website in here where you can get into the nitty gritty, but I'll leave that for Brad to get into. I know a lot of people were on another webinar about the federal stimulus bill. I know, and probably many of you on here have seen that the House passed phase 4. So we're going to see additional appropriations for the Paycheck Protection Program as well as the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. I'm happy, our office is happy to field questions about the federal programs. Obviously, we don't distribute those funds, but because you're, I'm sure, looking at all of this in a cohesive manner, happy to troubleshoot anything you have with regards to the PPP or EIDL. I included some additional lending resources that are outside of DCEO. As it was mentioned, our programs at the state, I think, should be looked at as a complement to a lot of the federal programs. And you should kind of, I think, refer to them in that way as well. But the SBA has additional loan programs. Again, something that we're happy to troubleshoot for you and get answers for with our contacts over at SBA. There are community development financial institutions that are offering loans in low-income communities. It's usually less than $250,000. And we provide, a link for you to be able to access that. And then I also mentioned the Treasurers Program, which Rebecca will get into in depth. I also wanted to include that, we're trying to make sure we're on top of any private funds that are out there. We did talk about the U.S. Chambers loan program or grant program that they had. That money ran out, I think, in 24 hours. But we wanted to include the Verizon Small Business Recovery Fund. It is another opportunity for you to get funding from another source. Again, this is $2.5 million from Verizon for small businesses. The funding will go to make grants of up to $10,000, but they are doing it in chunks. So it's 5,000, 7,000, 10,000, and nonprofit organizations are ineligible for this funding. It can all go, the funding can go to working capital. And again, this application is, needs to be submitted by Tuesday, April 28th. So in 4 days, if you want to have a chance to look over the FAQ there, again, we provide that link in the PowerPoint. Two other sources or resources that I wanted to bring to your attention that are outside of DCEO. The one is Bring. So this is a Evanston-based company who has offered to handle delivery and logistics for free for small businesses who previously had not been set up for something like this. Bring Now is the program, and it's allowing small business owners to quickly load incoming orders, dispatch deliveries to their own drivers or crowdsource fleets, and deliver items to customers with a fully branded real-time Uber-like experience. I've provided 2 contacts for that. If that's something that you're interested in doing, they will get back to you right away. They're very excited about this program and being able to assist our small businesses at this time. I also included Venturize, like our small business development centers that we have across the state that provide support for small business owners. Venturize is an online resource hub doing that. They will have opportunity for you to look at different funding sources or just kind of get an understanding of what you need as a small business owner and the different resources that are out there. This is just a general overview of the different resources that DCEO has. I know we get a lot of questions about essential businesses. What is an essential business? What is a non-essential business? Are there specific parts of your business that are essential? Are there specific parts that are non-essential? For all those inquiries, I encourage you to go to our website and our frequently asked questions, but we also have a hotline. That hotline can also be used to troubleshoot any questions you have outside of non-essential businesses, and also an email that we try to respond within 24 hours. The representative has my email address though, so if you have a question that you need answered in a couple hours, I'm always happy to try to help you out. I know it can be really difficult and frustrating sometimes when you don't have that real person to be able to ask some of these things, and everything is very time sensitive. So I want to be a resource for everyone as well on this call, to just be able to help in any way that I can and get you that information. I'm not going to dive into all of this, but I did create an appendix on this PowerPoint with frequently asked questions on our state programs, frequently asked questions on the Paycheck Protection Program, information on unemployment insurance, and FAQ on that. Specifically, the FAQ goes into what employers are asking us, not really about if you're an individual seeking unemployment insurance, unless you're a 1099. I did include some information on that if you're a sole proprietor, and we have a new program for unemployment insurance that will be live on May 11th that will allow sole proprietors to apply for unemployment insurance for the first time, and those benefits will be backdated starting from January 27th. We also have so just a slide on both this information. I also wanted to include our local workforce innovation areas. Again, this is more for employees or people that maybe you've had to let go of, and you want to make sure that your employees, who if you've had to let go of anyone, have resources and information that they want or need, including employers that are hiring right now based off COVID and additional need that they have. I also included some information about personal protective equipment. I think we've seen that a lot of manufacturers are shifting gears and starting to produce PPE. So if you want to manufacture PPE, if you need, manufacturers that need to sell PPE, or you want to donate PPE, this slide has all of that information. All right, so that's the end of my presentation. Again, I know it's a lot of information, so I wanted to spend a lot of time in Q&A, but I'm going to hand it off to Brad to get into the Illinois Small Business Emergency Loan Fund.
Thank you, Margaret, and good morning, everyone. Just 30 seconds on who Axion is, and then I'm going to spend just a couple minutes on the emergency loan fund, and then I'm going to stop because I want to then be able to turn it over to the treasurer and then get to Q&A, because I think that's where most of the pointed questions can come, and we can give specific answers on that basis. So first, Axion serving Illinois and Indiana is the organization that I run. We are based on the west side of Chicago, but as the name suggests, we serve all of Illinois and Indiana. We are a mission-driven nonprofit, a community development financial institution, and our mission is to help neighborhood entrepreneurs grow. And we do that by providing the capital and the coaching and the connections that small business owners need to create jobs and wealth in their communities. We have a particular focus on underserved communities, on minority entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, those that are traditionally underserved by traditional financial institutions. So, end of commercial. In this particular context, we are the lead lending partner for the northern half of the state with the state on this emergency loan fund. And so I'm just going to very briefly just walk through the main criteria here. And this is mostly relevant for the small businesses in the Naperville area who have already applied, who are now trying to get through this process. So let me say first and foremost that anytime anybody has a question about how they would go about either qualifying or collecting the right documents or figuring out what the appropriate amount to borrow would be, that's what we're here for. And so we have a team of people who are doing nothing but answering questions about this program and helping people through their applications. Having said that, as Margaret had suggested, the demand has been overwhelming. That shouldn't surprise anybody. We've got an enormous number of applications and dollar requests that far exceed the amount of money that we have available at the moment. And so we're both trying to be fast and prudent while also asking for patience from folks. And that's never easy, but that's where we are, and that's the nature of the crisis that we're in. So just a few specifics. Unlike the Paycheck Protection Program, where you're very focused in that program on calculating payroll and focusing on the amount of expenses that you have for compensation for your employees, in this particular case, this is focused on your business revenue. So for the 2019 average monthly revenue that you were generating pre-crisis, that is the basis for the sizing of this loan, up to $50,000. And so the way that we do that is just take business bank statements from October through February and look at the deposits that are in there as a good proxy for revenues that you have been generating, again, pre-crisis. Just take an average of what you were doing on a monthly basis and have that be the maximum loan amount, up to $50,000. We view that as the fastest way to do a very quick calculation while having some degree of prudence in this so we don't over-indebt any small business owner without asking a small business owner to be making projections in the way that maybe a typical loan process would work, because small business owners at the moment, by and large, are not going to be able to make accurate projections of what they think that their business is going to look like in the next 6 months. That's just silly in this environment, so we're not going to do that. So that's how we size the loans. The way in which we're trying to make sure that it's targeted and that we're distributing the scarce resources that we have as far as we can is that we're looking to serve businesses who have 50 employees or fewer and $3 million or less in revenue in 2019. We're looking for businesses that have been in operation for at least a year at the time of the application, again, to try to figure out how to take the dollars that are available and apply them to those businesses who have a track record but are small and would otherwise be sort of likely to be left behind by the big financial institutions. And we're looking for the small business owner to make an attestation that they'll be using the funds in order to provide compensation and try to rebuild the business and the workforce in it over the following 6 months. But again, that's via attestation because no small business owner can prove that right now because it's a future forward statement. So there's a lot more detail behind it than that, but I want to just stop there because I suspect that the value here is going to be mostly through the Q&A. But thank you, and I'm happy to answer questions when we get there.
So I would like to thank everybody. Brad, I think it's very wise of you guys to not require the fiscal forecast by the businesses. I mean, we have major corporations that have totally given up on guidance. So to ask a small business owner to ask, to calculate where they're going to be in 4 months is, worse than a crystal ball projection. I mean, that's I appreciate that. So I don't know if people are familiar with the chat feature, but if you have any questions, we can go about it that way, or we can We can just try unmuting people and seeing where that goes. So who has a question?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Hi, my name is Rosemary Spann, and my husband and I own a charter bus company in Naperville. We've applied for the PPP, and we also have applied for the EIDL loan. So I'm listening to you for the funds that might be available through the state of Illinois. But what I'm hearing from Brad and from Heather is many of the funds have already exceeded, what the demand has been. So my question is simply this. I don't want to waste my time applying for loans that have already been, given out. Between the two of you or the three of you or all of you, who should I really apply for funds for our business? Our business is not payroll heavy. Our business model is expenses heavy. So can you give me some guidance regarding this as to who I really should apply for funds with? And I really like what you're doing, Brad. So anybody have any answers for me? Thank you.
I can take a stab at that, but obviously, as always, just encourage everyone else to jump in who has a point of view here. Let me say first that my answer is going to be very different than it would be in normal times. It seems to me that the way in which to proceed here as a small business owner who's looking for liquidity, who needs that cash in order to keep the business going, is to apply to the place that you think you'll be most likely to find that capital. That is absolutely wrong in a normal context, because we would never suggest that someone would go just spray around loan applications where your credit's going to be pulled over and over and over again. But in this case, given the crisis that we're in and all the very, very long queues that people are trying to fight through for the various programs, I don't think it's in this crisis a bad thing to apply in multiple places. Having said that, for your particular situation, given the fact that you're not payroll heavy, the payroll protection program structure isn't going to be as effective for you as for most. And so in that case, I think if you have an application already in the queue for the Illinois program, that's the place to be, I think. If you don't, then I think when we're intending on, if we can raise the sufficient additional capital and get through the queue as fast as possible to reopen perhaps the Illinois program, that'd be the place to go. So I think there's those. And then finally, the last thing to suggest is that the SBA emergency, whatever EIDL stands for, disaster loan, emergency injury disaster loan. That is, I think, a valuable place for you to apply for two reasons. One is that it's federal, and therefore the funding has been replenished as of what the House did yesterday and the president signing. But then secondly, well, three things actually. Secondly, it's not payroll driven. And therefore you're not constrained in that way. But third and finally, the Congress has decided that because those are typically so slow to receive, simply by applying for that, you get a $10,000 grant just to apply. So that's clearly new, and we like grants. Grants are way better than loans if you can get them. So applying for that and receiving that grant, even while you're through the long queue at the SBA, seems to me to be a sensible thing to do.
Hey, if I may interrupt here briefly, I completely, we still have one more speaker to hear from. Rebecca Houston on the Bridge Loan Program. My apologies. I was a bit distracted here. So if you want to continue, that would be great.
Excuse me. Great. Thank
Sorry
you.
about that.
I think I need the other video to stop. Really fast. If Margaret, you can pull that slide down. Here we go. Okay. Perfect. Okay. Can everybody see that? Okay, so thank you. Good morning. No worries about the oversight there. Thank you, obviously, for inviting the State Treasurer's Office to come and present what we've been doing internally at the Treasurer's Office. So just over a month ago, obviously, we could clearly see that this pandemic's growth, and we at the State Treasurer's Office were challenged with two tasks. The first one was to plan for operational sustainability and find a way to conduct mission critical tasks remotely. And obviously we've accomplished that with this Zoom meeting and other areas of interest. Obviously we operate a 529 Bright Start program. We also run our unclaimed property division, which is rather, and we've had to transition over to operating these remotely, and we've done quite well with that. And then second, we needed to identify programs within the Treasurer's Office that we can invoke to help small businesses now, not later, and that we could stand up quickly. And that answer is our Invest in Illinois programs. I am the director of the Invest in Illinois programs, and we have a variety of programs that we offer at the State Treasurer's Office, starting with our Ag Invest program, our Business Invest program, and our Community Invest program. Since obviously a month and a half ago, we've since launched our small business COVID-19 relief program that you can see there. These programs provide impact investment deposits to lending institutions to assist with farm-related expenses, business expenses, consumer expenses, consumer loans, and other important economic activities. The Invest in Illinois program incentivizes financial institutions to lend to groups that are marginalized by limited loans or high interest rates. And we provide that at a lower cost to borrowers. So we've been doing this since 1983. This program started way back, 4 decades ago with the Ag Invest program. And since then, we've deposited over $4 billion with these programs to incentivize the different areas that I had mentioned. So because of that, we've been able to scale up quickly. We have the opportunity to take these programs and transition them to assist in the necessary areas. So a couple of weeks ago, we announced at the State Treasurer's Office that we had set aside $250 million to capitalize banks and credit unions, so they in turn could help small businesses push through this COVID-19 crisis. So under the Small Business COVID-19 Relief Program, we have deposited funds. Sorry, I'm not very good with my own slideshow. We have deposited funds at a rate of near zero deposit rate of 0.01%. So what we've done is we've taken this $250 million and have committed it to financial institutions across the state at a below market rate. And as you can see on the screen, here are some of the other caveats to the program, and I won't go through all of those one by one, but just to give you kind of a little bit of background of how this is worked across the state. So just in a month, we've already committed $220 million to 27 banks and credit unions who have agreed to participate. To date, we've funded $70 million to 20 financial institutions. And based on data that we've received to date from 5 of those institutions, we've supported 492 small businesses. The average loan is $78,500. 96% of those small businesses are employing less than 50 people, and 99% of the borrowers are using these loans for payroll, to fund payroll. This money will help small businesses keep their operations going. If you are interested in participating in our program, again, this works through financial institutions across the state. So we look to partner and continue our partnership and to grow our partnership with financial institutions across the state. If we are already working with an institution that is a partner with us, you could receive money in as little as a few days. If you are with an institution that is not a participant with us, it may take anywhere from a few days to a week to onboard them into the program, depending on what collateral they would pledge with the program. Generally, we are prepared to offer lending institutions deposits of $25 million. They can receive those dollars in $1 to $5 million increments. Already, I've had a few institutions that have taken $25 million and have requested more on top of that. The demand has been so great. And most of our demand, as I could say, is through the PPP loan, whereas we have been bridging that loan gap with banks and providing them the liquidity that they need to get the funding out quickly to these small businesses. And I expect that will be a great deal of our participation with this COVID-19 crisis. So especially with the new monies that are being allocated. They've also used these funds as a bridge loan opportunity for small businesses as well. So with that said, you know, any of these, our program especially can complement any of the other programs. We're not in direct competition with any of them. So if you get a PPP loan or other loans that are available, you can definitely still apply for the state treasurer's program through your institution. We definitely want to be able to bridge that gap and provide assistance where necessary. With that, I will take any questions. I'll leave this up. I think we're opening it up to the Q&A for everyone at this point, so we can continue.
Rebecca, if I can ask a quick question. You say you partner with local banks. Are you aware of any Naperville area banks that are participating in this program already?
I lost my last slide. Give me that. I go off of counties. Give me that county.
DuPage County. Yes,
I do. So this is what I would say to all of you. I'm using a different PowerPoint presentation. I apologize. I had a slide that had the website. So if you go out to our web at illinoistreasurer.gov and you go to the Invest in Illinois page, down at the very bottom is the COVID-19 page on top of that, okay? So there are two different areas. There are the approved depository banks, and then there's the participating depository banks that we have, and so there's 27. I expect I'll have 30 by the weekend. I have about 5 more that are filling out paperwork to onboard into the program. So once you pull up that list, the way that we have it displayed is the institutions where their main branch is. So for example, if you don't see one that says Naperville, it doesn't mean that one of those banks covers Naperville. So for example, People's Bank and Trust in Pana, their bank will reach out to 8 separate counties.
Okay.
So that doesn't always mean that they have a branch located in that county, but that they service those counties. So if you see a bank up there, please do your due diligence and look them up to see if they have a presence, or contact me and I'm happy to let you know. We just don't have the capability of putting every county that they service out on our webpage. So again, just make sure that you don't look at that and kind of shy away from it, because there is other opportunities with those institutions. And I know I do have a DuPage presence.
Excellent. Reba, do you want to handle the Q&A, or how do you want to go about this?
I will do that.
Okay.
So the first question we have, let's see. Dawn has, my understanding is the EIDL loan is $1,000 per employee eligible, or is it the advance? Now, just for clarification, this is a very good question, Dawn. So my understanding, when the EIDL pot was getting quite low, instead of offering the $10,000, they said it was going to be, they kind of shrank back to say it's going to be $1,000 per employee. But I don't know, with the new money that's come in to refill the pot, do any of you know is it back to the $10,000 grant again? Did someone speak to that?
We're awaiting guidance on that, but our expectation is that it will snap back to the $10,000 grant. We would expect to have that clarified today by the SBA or the Treasury or both, but we don't have that clarification yet.
Very good. That's very good. So, Dawn, did that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you, Brad.
Okay. That was an excellent question. Okay, and then if you haven't applied for the small business loan yet, should we even bother yet. So, Eileen, if you want to clarify, are you asking, since they're not accepting applications? Anyway, Eileen, could you clarify your question?
Yes, I didn't even know that this was an option. So, and now it's closed. So does that mean it's not going to reopen, or is it even something that we should keep on the radar for the future?
I would certainly recommend you keep it on the radar for the future. We've received over 3,000 applications so far, and we're working through those as quickly as we can. And that's why it was sensible to pause the application so that we don't have people applying, having their credit pulled when they're so far back in the queue. But for sure, if we're able to reopen open the application, we'll do the best we can to blast that out as far and wide as possible, including everybody on this webinar.
Yeah, and we will make that it is temporary closed. We'll make sure that, on our website, as soon as that application is open again, that people have the resources and that we're continually updating with information about whether or not people will be able to access those funds.
Right.
So I do want to say it's not permanently closed at this time. It is temporarily, just we're taking a pause on applications.
So I have a question regarding that. So if I'm sure through some of your contact information, if one of our members can consult with someone, would that be Brad or Margaret to find out, so make sure that they have a clear understanding of what exactly is the, I guess, the documentation, so they'll be ready to shoot it out the second it opens. Are you open for that kind of consultation?
Absolutely. So go ahead, Margaret.
Yeah, no, yeah. For paperwork and everything, DCO, we're happy to get that from Brad. We're happy to point you in the direction of other resources, everything like that. We're happy to do that.
That would be super. Let's see if there's any.
And just to be precise about I think the fastest way to get the answers that you're seeking, on the emergency capital site that Axion has stood up, and I'll give you that specific URL to share with the whole of the group here.
That would be super.
Yeah, we've put a link to a question and answer form that my team is held responsible to provide answers to within 24 hours. And so just type in your question. We'll then get back to you via email, and then if necessary, a follow-up phone call if it's even more complicated case.
Fabulous. That is great. Okay, so there's more questions popping up here. Let me, we are an international company. We bank with an international bank, which is not approved to apply for a PPP loan. How can we apply for the loan?
So you can you don't have to apply with your bank. You can apply with any bank that is approved with the SBA. I can get you, I'll send it actually in this chat box, the lender match tool. So you can see the lenders in your areas that are doing the PPP program.
Okay, so JJ, could you elaborate? Because what I'm thinking, you may be, are you asking, I know for PPP loans, even if you're an international company, if you have a workforce in the US, you're eligible. Was that your question, JJ?
Yeah, I mean, we're with an international bank, and I contacted them, I think like 3 weeks ago or so, or whenever it was put out initially. And they said that since they're not approved, that they could not apply for a loan for us. They could go through, let's say, like Chase or somebody like that. But obviously Chase has focused on their own clients, so we get put back in line, and then they ran out of money. So now around here for round 2, I contacted them again, and the story is the same. They're still not approved, so we do not have access to any through our bank. But Margaret, according to what you say, I can still apply then through a US-based bank then.
Yeah, and actually, I would, this is my DC. I want to recommend a bank in your area. The Wintrust I have found to be very responsive, and they got through quite a bit of the PPP loans that they had been doing. So that's kind of separate from DCO, I just know with Naperville, the Naperville Wind Trust Bank has been really great with the program, so I would just recommend them.
Okay.
I would add to that, not only has Wintrust been great, but Busey is another local chartered bank, Illinois chartered bank, that has been doing for many small businesses. So between Wintrust and Busey in Naperville, they've had pretty strong success in capturing those loans.
Okay, since I'm on right now, but with a tone or voice, can I just make a suggestion that's probably mostly for you, Grant?
Sure.
Right, as an international company, we have factories both in Europe and in China. So we bring in products. I mean, the payroll loans are fantastic and everything, but I just got a container in, 2 containers in actually from China. One container I had to pay $25,000 in the import duty taxes. And the other one I had to pay about, I think it was $7,000, $5,000, $7,000. So that's $32,000 that I have to pay to the federal government right now in import duties. I mean, I completely support the idea of us having to protect American jobs when it was put into place, and I understand what the White House was doing with it. But these days, it would be nice if they could suspend those things, because that is a huge chunk of cash flow I got to put out to the federal government right now.
So I will certainly share that with our members of Congress. I mean, I know at the state level we're working at looking at reducing fees and taxes along those lines, but that's something I will be more than happy to pass along to Congressman Underwood and Caston and Foster.
Yeah.
Along to add to that, we're in the process of trying to coordinating some type of town hall meeting with all 3 of the congressmen, and they, like Grant mentioned, Foster, Caston, and Underwood. So if we can pull that off, that would be a great discussion, because we're trying to create this conduit of information. They tell us what they're involved with, and then they certainly want to hear from our members. So we're trying to coordinate that in the next. I hope we can pull that off in the next week or so. So keep an eye out for that on our schedule.
Thank you.
So we have, let's see, another. Can a bridge loan be in addition to a PPP or used to pay off PPP when we get that? Oh, that's a good question, Thomas.
Yeah, I've got multiple PPP applications out there, and I'm hoping somebody comes through with one of those. But in the meantime, I mean, could this program that you guys are talking about here, whether it's Brad or Miss Houston, could that be in parallel and you just pay that off separately, or could you get that now and then use the PPP to pay that off, assuming you stay within the PPP guidelines for payroll costs, et cetera?
I can speak to the emergency loan program and then defer to the treasurer's office for that one. We're specifically designing the Illinois State Business Emergency Loan Fund to be complementary to the PPP in the way that Margaret had described it. And so there's absolutely no downside in securing Illinois State emergency loan and also a PPP, and then deciding as a business owner who knows your cash best, how to use those resources to either reduce debt or to invest both, or whatever you think is appropriate for your business. But there's no prohibition against having both and then using one to refinance the other, essentially.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's very good information. Okay, so there's a couple, keep sending your questions in or just jump in, but I have a couple of questions that one is, we've had a lot of our members reach out to us. I know the PPP is, if I remember, it has to be 75% of it has to be on payroll costs. Another huge line item that our businesses are struggling with is the rent or the mortgage. So you could use either one of these loans to go toward rent, correct? And then use the PPP if you received it to pay for payroll. Is that right?
Just a clarification on the way that PPP is structured. Recall that the amount that you can borrow is governed by how much you spent on staff compensation in 2019. And it's your average monthly times 2.5. That gives you the sort of amount at the closing table. Now, separately altogether is the amount that you can get forgiven. So once you have the funds, over the following 8 weeks, you then have an opportunity to spend those funds on the eligible expenses. And then there's a calculation that you'll do with your bank at the end of that 8-week period to see how much of the loan, if perhaps all of it, can be forgiven. And that is when the 75% spending on payroll threshold comes into play. Because you can get the loan and not use it on payroll if you want, you just can't get that portion forgiven. If you use your money on at least 75% of compensation, then your compensation costs, as well as rent, interest on mortgage, and utility expenses, all of those expenses can be forgiven for whatever you spend over the 8 weeks. So it's nuanced and a little complicated, but that's the distinction between the past and the future.
That is insanely interesting. Thank you. That's good clarification. One other question that I have, again, just hearing from other members in past conversations. So Rebecca, do you have any idea? So the loan through the bridge loan is through a financial institution, just like the SBA, no, just like the PPP. The EIDL and the disaster loan are both through an entity. Like Brad, there's a website that you go through. So Rebecca, do you have any idea what's the overlay between financial institutions that are SBA lenders and those that have applied to be the financial institutions for the bridge loan? Is that?
Yes, thank you. So as I think I mentioned, a great deal of our financial institutions, I would say out of the 5 that have taken deposits, that 70 million, 4 of those are utilizing those funds to provide PPP lending. They've done a great deal in PPP loans, and in order, the influx that they've produced, and when they settle, there's a time gap. There's a lapse in time as to when they'll receive those monies. So they've come into us and taken the deposit so that they can get those dollars out to those small businesses quickly. Then there's a whole other group that I think another person mentioned that doesn't offer SBA loans, that are just offering bridge, loan support. I will say also, out of like 27 of my institutions, they've all said that they would also offer deferment on payments. So whether that's, those individuals that did not get into the PPP loan, or those that don't offer SBA products, they are still doing their due diligence in making sure that they offer some sort of deferment, whether it be 3 months. I have some institutions that are doing 6-month deferments. They've really stepped up to provide, some sort of support. Those that are offering some deferments, we're then offering them the liquidity because they're not getting in those payments. I have one bank that's doing 800 consumer deferments. And so they've deferred mortgages, car payments, so on and so forth. So we've now provided the bank liquidity so that they can still operate and provide PPP loans on the other side. So it runs across the board as to, what the need is. And that's kind of how we talk to our banks too. We've opened up our program to many, many exceptions, whereas, we're providing for consumer lending. We're providing for SBA lending. We're providing just a specific straight bridge loan for businesses.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. So another question. Any estimate of when the DCO small business loan, emergency loan may reopen?
Not at this time, but we're just trying to, expand our capacity. So we should have updates soon. And as soon as we have those updates, they'll be on our website. Perfect.
Fabulous. Okay. So what is the interest rate of the bridge loan? I guess that's a Rebecca question.
So as I mentioned, we make the deposit into the institution at 0.01%. So, but there's a cost to doing business with the state treasurer's office. So we kept the cost low on the financial institution side so that they can in turn pass along those savings to the borrower. One of the rules of utilizing the bridge loan program is they cannot charge greater than 4.75. I don't know if I quoted it, but out of the 495 loans that have been provided, they've all been provided with preferred loan rates, meaning that they're not getting a market rate, they're getting a preferred rate, which is well under the 4.75 max that we have on our loan. But that is something that is on the institutional level, that they will make that determination as to your interest rate.
Okay.
If I can just, the loan from the treasurers to the bank is 0.01. Did I hear that?
Correct. Right. So the, you know, I had mentioned, so in any of my other programs, the interest rate is 0.49. Obviously the market has really taken a dive. But we offered this at such a well below market rate so that we can get those institutions on board and we can get that money out to the small businesses. And as I mentioned, there is a cost of doing business, whereas we are not a guarantee program. So any institution taking a deposit greater than $250,000 has to pledge collateral with us.
Okay.
So there is a cost behind that. So we like to keep that rate low so that they don't have to pass along that cost to the consumer.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's another question, Rosemary, if you want to jump in and add to this. We applied for an EIDL loan on April 1st and received a number, but haven't heard anything. Should we apply or continue to wait?
So I just sent the contact information for the SBA and specifically the Illinois Regional's email address. So I would suggest you reach out to them. I don't think that you should reapply, but just because this is an SBA program, I would encourage you to check with them to see what the status is of your loan application.
So a general question about that. I know if you've applied for a PPP loan and you're waiting, or an SBA EIDL and you're waiting, could you apply for a bridge loan, then decline it if you get the other loan? How does that? What are you? How does that work?
I think that's for me. So yeah, absolutely. I think that is something that each small business needs to work out with their banker. So if you've applied for a small business bridge loan and all of a sudden your PPP money comes through, I think that there is some wiggle room there on the institution side, whereas you can possibly, stop the process on that. Yeah, in most cases, like I said, a lot of these funds are being used for those that are kind of waiting for that PPP too. So it allows the institution to be able to at least provide some sort of financing mechanism for them while they wait for their PPP money to come through.
Okay, so that they could, in theory, get the approval, but not. I'm struggling with what's the loan. It's not you can get approved, but you can't you can hold off getting the whatever the term is for accepting the
deposit. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely.
So just that's a question that we get a lot. So
I think it goes to say, obviously there's there's a your credit report is pulled, when you go and you apply for these types of loans. So I think working with your institution and just, being smart about it is just important in this, and especially in these cases.
Okay, very, very good. Okay, so Bo, I think you have a question.
I do. I have friends, and I bet a bunch of us on here do, who are independent contractors and sole proprietors. And they are allowed to apply for PPP now. Do they, if they've already applied, and of course it's been in abeyance, do they need to apply again? The May 11th is the date that's been announced by the state where it opens up. Should they go on and apply right now? Do they need to wait until May 11th?
All right, so you're asking about unemployment insurance?
Correct.
Okay, so for a 1099 employee for unemployment insurance, they should apply now because they need to get rejected to be able to go onto the emergency unemployment. And they will be able to apply for that on May 11th. The application is supposed to be live on May 11th, but you do, as an independent contractor, you do have to apply first, get denied, and then apply again through the other application or program that'll be up on the week of May 11th.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Very good information. Okay, so we just have a few more minutes. Can any other questions that are pressing before we kind of close things up? And I apologize if I've missed some questions in the chat. So this, the recording of this call will be available. I think if Lindsay's still on the line, will be available. And then there's some phenomenal resources that have been in the chat that to follow up. I think this is a lot of incredibly valuable information. It answers a lot of questions that I get from our members. So any other questions?
Reba, can I just give a quick thank you?
Oh, no, thank you. This is such great discussion. I wish I could just absorb all this great information that you guys have provided, because we get questions all the time from members, and I try to stay as abreast as I can, but there's so many in the weeds questions that you guys were just invaluable in answering. And Representative Wehrli, this is great to convene all these great resources together for our members.
And if I may, I'd like to thank Margaret from DCEO, Rebecca from the Treasurer's Office, Brad from, I forgot the name of it. I want to say Accenture, but I know that's not it, so forgive me for that.
Axiom, close enough.
There we go. And then the Chamber. Thank you for doing this, and everybody that participated. My office remains open to help in any way we can. repwehrli.com is a website, 630-696-4160. If you have any direct questions, we're right next door to the Chamber, so you know where my office is located, although I'm usually not here that much anymore. But thank you, Chamber, for putting this together.
Thank you so much. And then please feel free to follow up. There's great resources available through the links, but call me anytime. I love to hear your stories. I love to hear if I can't answer a question, I'll try to direct you to the resources that can. So thank you again, everybody, so much. This was phenomenal.
Thank you, everybody. And feel free to distribute my contact info, Reba, that you've got, as I'm sure everyone else would as well, just for follow-up questions if I can be helpful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Wonderful, wonderful dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Take care. Bye-bye.